Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to resume with our public briefing. So now we have Food Banks Canada and Nutrition North here with us. So Food Banks, please introduce yourself and do your presentation. Thank you. Sorry.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jason Stevens. I'm the Northern Network Manager for Food Banks Canada.
And my name is Isaac Smith. I'm the Manager of Policy and Government Relations at Food Banks Canada. So I guess we're going to start off.
Good afternoon, everybody. For our presentation today, we're presenting the programs for the Food Banks Canada Northern Program. I'll introduce myself. My name is Jason Stevens, Northern Network Manager. Nijigamig Dijna Cost, Mayangan Tutam, Sapotawiag Donji. I just want to say thanks again for having us speak in front of the community today. We're here to present our programs and services for Food Bank Canada in relation to the Sahtu region. We're looking at providing supports and food security initiatives for the communities around the Sahtu region within the Northwest Territories area. We're hoping to connect and collaborate with the communities in the region to provide food security initiatives. We're looking at all aspects from community-led projects to be able to have succession in our programs. So we're here today to be able to provide information, provide resources, as well as provide the proper, I guess you could say, the proper steps to accommodate the communities in moving forward with food security. So we're looking at some very, very valuable stats here coming from Food Banks Canada in the last year. So we're looking at 8.7 million people in the households report food security in our communities across Canada. There's been a 90% increase in food bank visits since 2019. It's been recorded as our highest in history, where we had 2 million visits within the food bank services in 2024. 40% are social assistance, income assistance clients. 33% of those are children, as well as 18% of the equation are Indigenous people. We had access to 28 million pounds of food into food banks by F23. So for Food Banks Canada, we operate in the areas of sourcing food to share, supporting the network, conducting research, as well as advocating for policy and change. With these umbrellas, we look towards our team to provide these supports to communities and organizations to help support their food security initiatives in the region as well as nationally. So we are providing the outputs and resources within our means to make food security initiatives more available and more aware of the issues that are arising in our nation. So with the Food Bank Canada network, we're in a spectrum of Food Banks Canada, as well as our provincial territorial associations, as well as our regional hubs and local food banks. So we look at all aspects between each of these levels to provide supports and resources. We want to achieve food autonomy in these areas with our programs and services, as well being that voice on a national level for our communities to advocate for food security supports in the region as well. So for engagement, we look at the biggest part of engagement is being able to connect with each of our community representatives, our regions, at the community level as well as the organizational level. We want to make that impact community, regional, as well as territorial with food security programs and services from Food Banks Canada. We look at that approach with multi-partnership stakeholders, as well as looking at other organizations to be able to provide supports into the community's organizations for food security initiatives. Our access, let's get. So for access, expanding our infrastructure and supplying people with nutritious food as well as country food in our programs. Food Bank Canada really put ourselves in the driver's seat to make sure that we're providing the output and resources for each of our communities to accommodate them with their food security activities. And that's why our advocacy panel, we're championing and we're providing these resources for our communities who want to have that food security system implemented in their region or community. So some of our initiatives and programs at Food Banks Canada, they're nationally across all coast to coast of our nation. We look at emergency response where we provide resources to emergency response situations across the nation. We provide emergency resources as well as food supports into these areas of need. We look at Food for All with our programs and services where no one goes hungry with our programs and services. So we make that a speaking point when we connect with our communities that we want to achieve that food autonomy where everyone eats in the community. For our capacity boost, we provide a grant annually for communities, organizations to improve their infrastructure capacity in their communities and organizations to help support food activities in their communities or organizations. For Northern Food Security, we provide support in all areas. Again, I'm going to be using supports as one of our key activity words here because it is a support for us to be able to recognize what the community sees to be able to move forward into food security. We have communities that are in 3 stages where they're food insecure, they are food secure, and they are food sovereign. So we look to achieve those 3 steps with our communities to help them achieve food sovereignty within their means of food initiatives. Improving access to these programs and services is part of our mandate as well, to be able to have full access to our communities, organizations, to be able to use our programs and services with their food security initiatives and programs. One of the other programs that we're rolling out in the new year is the After the Bell program. It's a program for school-age snacks, school-age children to have nutritious, healthy snacks during the summer months in our communities, which we know that a lot of communities are looking for that extra nutritious meal out of our communities in the summer months. So we provide this program for our communities in the north to have access to the school-age snack program. So between 2021 and 2022, food insecurity in the territories rose 26% and almost close to 36%, compares to 23% in other provinces in 2022. Territories had the second highest among, with the 26.4% food insecurity. Unfortunately, food insecurity rates on nations are not collected. The data that we're trying to pull from our communities is mostly towards looking at how we can lower that number of food security families in that area. With that being said, we developed a Northern Advisory Group to be able to have that boots on the ground, that in community knowledge, to have general, I guess you could say, that general picture of what's going on in each of our communities, that we want to have that notion that we're being an organization where we're supporting our communities within the food security realm.
Okay, I guess it's over to me. I'll try to be quick. And I know we're sharing our time, and I know we want to leave lots of room for questions. I already introduced myself, so we can maybe just jump ahead right into the next slide. On the policy and advocacy team at Food Banks Canada, there's a few different things we do. I kind of simplified it down to these three main points, these three main processes. So firstly, of course, just trying to gain an understanding of the issues that are affecting communities. That's usually done just through, your typical research methods, a lot of reading, but we also do a lot of surveying as well. We have a research team at Food Banks Canada that does some amazing work, some work that's not being done really anywhere else in the country. And so really trying to employ a lot of different methods to understanding what's happening in community. And then in addition to that, of course, in a best case scenario, going into communities or speaking directly with individuals who are affected to get a better understanding of where the challenges lie. That's where, our Northern Advisory Group comes in, or the opportunities like this where I get to come up north and speak to folks. From there, we can then start looking at proposing solutions. So once we kind of have that information together, we work on developing unique policy that aims to be realistic, it aims to address the specific issues that we heard within communities. And then finally, on to step 3 is then advocating those solutions that we've developed. When it comes to advocating those solutions, there's a lot of different things that we try to do. We run different advocacy campaigns. We meet with government officials. We're kind of working on 2 levels. We're trying to make sure that the public cares about the issue, and we're also trying to make sure that governments across the country care about the issues as well. And like I said, there are a lot of different ways that we try to do this internally, but we also work with our network of food banks across the country to try to help them to advocate as well. We provide a lot of resources. We provide, we'll be looking next year actually at providing additional funding for advocacy towards food banks. So anything we can do to help facilitate that advocacy process on the ground as well is something that we're looking to continue expanding. Next slide, please. So in terms of how we really do our policy work, and what are the big outputs from Food Banks Canada? There's 2 reports throughout the year. I mean, we're doing a lot. We write a lot of different pieces or respond to different government actions, but these are the two main pieces that comprise our work throughout the year. So the poverty report cards you may be familiar with. This is actually a report that we provide grades for every territory, province, and the federal government. We provide grades for how well they're doing in terms of poverty reduction efforts. It's a very elaborate report. The report card itself is comprised of several categories, several indicators and sections, and we also provide a very in-depth analysis for each of those jurisdictions in terms of what the state of poverty looks like, where the main issues lie, what we're seeing politically. Really, it's kind of a one-stop shop in terms of what's going on in Canada, at both levels, federally and provincial, territorial, to see what's going on with poverty and food insecurity. And then, of course, the hunger count. So Jay was mentioning earlier some of the stats that we get from our hunger count report. That's basically our report where every March we can take data and it shows us what the state of food banking looks like in Canada at that exact moment. It's really important to look at the hunger count because I'm sure you folks are aware a lot of the data that governments typically are working with can be a little bit outdated. Sometimes you're looking at data that's a couple years old, and in fact, I know in the north that can often be a few years old for data. And so the hunger count really helps to provide a more up-to-date view of what's happening on the ground. If we're starting to see a shift in terms of the amount of seniors that are visiting food banks, that tells us perhaps that there's something going on, and hopefully something that you can respond to before you have to wait around for the next round of data that might come sometime later. Next slide, please. So in terms of some of the challenges that we face with the policy and advocacy side of our work, it really centers around data and information collection. So you'll see on the slide here, the top image, all the provinces have grades. This is from our poverty report cards just this past year. And unfortunately, in the case of the north of all 3 territories, we're unable to conclusively provide grades or honestly a lot of data and information that we can in the provinces. And that hinders our ability to also talk about solutions in a way that we feel very sure of. You see also on the second image below that we're really only able to provide conclusive information on the legislative progress section. But in terms of the actual data that comes from our survey, unfortunately, we've done really a lot to try to mitigate that. We've expanded our surveying. We've also moved over to using phones and things like that. But I mean, we're all aware of the realities of why information collection is difficult in the north. Obviously, communities are spread over a large geographic area. There's understandably trust issues a lot of the time with individuals, giving their information to somebody that they don't know. Those are just a couple of the reasons why we might be seeing these common problems. Next slide, please. I just threw these in here. We don't need to maybe go too deep. If you actually want to jump to the next one, because I know those are our federal policy recommendations. We also have recommendations for the territory for this government, for this committee. These are released every year in our poverty report cards, and these are abbreviated recommendations that you're seeing on the slide here, but we do have there's a lot more detail on these recommendations in the report itself. Again, this is all based off of evidence that we've been able to gather, as well as information that we've collected from our advisory committees. Next slide. So just looking to the future, I'll end it here. We're always looking to collaborate more. The better we have, the more collaboration we do, the more understanding we have, we can provide better solutions to issues long term. We're going to continue to look to improve the work we already have in decolonizing that information gathering process. I always have that up there. I'm open to feedback, but my email's at the very bottom. So if anybody wishes to reach out with any questions or concerns, please let me know. That's everything.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. We will now proceed to with Nutrition North, and after that, the members will ask questions. So I think Nutrition North, they are online. So we will proceed with Mr. Isaac. Isaac. Okay. Mr. Walsh, please proceed with your presentation.
Of the Nutrition North program here with the Government of Canada. I want to say I'm a proud alumni of St. Patrick's High School and a former employee of the Legislative Assembly, so I'm always happy to come back and present. I'll go through this fairly quickly today because I think we can all benefit from some wholesome and discussions and questions afterwards. So the Nutrition North program, just next slide please. First of all, when we talk about food security, and I think our previous presenters did a really good job in capturing this, it's a very complex issue, and it's primarily driven by poverty. And I think it's important to remember that no single government, whether it's federal, provincial, territorial, or Indigenous, has all the resources in order to tackle this issue. So it's really, really important that we all work together and find solutions that are led by communities in a way that matches the community's needs and priorities. Next slide, please. So Nutrition Canada and food security. So we have a suite of programs with Nutrition North. You're probably most familiar, for those who live in isolated communities, with Nutrition North in the retail subsidy side of things. So we provide a subsidy to lower prices so that they're more affordable. But we do have other suites of programs aimed at addressing food insecurity. And they include the Harvester Support Grant, Community Food Fund, the Food Programs Fund. We do have nutrition education initiatives, and there's a food security research grant. And I'll talk very briefly on all of these items. Next slide, please. So this gives you an idea of the NNC eligible communities. So we have 126 communities currently participating in the program, 126 that benefit from the retail subsidy. And I think we have 116 or so that benefit from the Harvest Support Grant Community Food Fund. And I'll explain the difference in a minute. But so you'll note the communities in Northwest Territories that participate or are eligible for Nutrition North. The one thing that I think people are always fascinated or surprised at is a vast majority, like a good majority of the communities that are eligible in Nutrition North are actually in Manitoba and Northern Ontario. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned earlier, the retail subsidy is the area you're probably most familiar with. It's the longest serving part of the program. It was introduced back in 2011. And the retail subsidy is, the way it works is for those eligible communities, we provide subsidies on a range of nutritious foods that are also fresh and perishable. We have different categories of subsidy depending on what category it is. We apply different things or different level of the subsidy. And the retailer in the communities are responsible for passing it down that cost savings to community members. And we have a number of different mechanisms that we employ to ensure full pass-through of the subsidy to communities, including if you go to the grocery store, that's an NNC community, you will, for the larger retailers, when you get your sales receipt, you'll be able to see exactly how much money you've saved as a result of the Nutrition North program. Having said that, though, we're constantly looking at improving and the program, particularly on the retail subsidy side, and we're currently working with academic and Indigenous partners on that front to make sure that the program works better, whether it's making sure that the full transparency and accountability of the subsidy is being passed through, but also are we getting it right in terms of, are we subsidizing the right products? Is it what people are looking for, et cetera? Next slide, please. So, very quickly, during the pandemic, obviously it was a bit of a shock to the system for everybody, including a massive disruption in supply chains, both nationally and in the north, specifically in the north. And so one of the things we did during the pandemic is we did play a key role in connecting remote communities with new avenues for supply chain connections, including food banks. So the program evolved. We added new terms and conditions that allowed us to subsidize transport of donated or free food for nonprofit organizations like the Food Banks of Canada, among others. So that was a big change for us. And we're continuously working in that area. We've got other partners, for example, Harvest Manitoba, Second Harvest, and other regional food distribution associations now that are working with us. And over the last year, we've been able to ship over 1,000 kilograms of food that were donated to isolated communities. And so we continue to foster those partnerships. A lot of, like all the partnerships are led by Indigenous governments and communities, and we're there to play a support role in connecting in the communities with the different players that can assist in addressing food security in those areas. Next slide. So for us, the big one as well that I think has had a significant impact for Nutrition North and for communities was the introduction of the Harvester Support Grant. This is something that we heard from our, in particular, our northern Indigenous communities. You know, the store-bought food is what it is, but everybody has told us that locally harvested food is better, it's healthier, and that's what people want, and that's where they want supports at. So the Harvester Support Grant was launched in 2019, and it provides a wide range of supports across 112 isolated communities throughout our catchment area. The grant, we're very careful, is built in collaboration with Land Claims, Self-Government, and Indigenous Organization. And we did that very deliberately for a couple of reasons. One is we wanted the program to be as flexible as possible. We recognize that harvesting traditions vary from community to community and region to region. And the last thing you want is for a white guy like me who lives in Ottawa to tell you what the rules are, right? So when it comes to traditional activities. So it is a grant. We did, as I mentioned, we did that on purpose, and it allows for funding flexibility. So communities can then, knowing that they have, grant money, can then design their Harvester Support Grant accordingly. So what I mean by that is if you're a coastal community, the investments you make could be quite different than an inland community. It could be towards boats, whereas an inland community and fishing, whereas an inland community might focus on things like skidoos or community hunts or things like that. So we did that very purposefully, and I'm happy to talk in more detail about that. Next slide, please. So we call this the Community Food Programs Fund. We learned some really important lessons from the introduction of the Harvester Support Grant. The Harvester Support Grant, what we heard from partners and communities was it was very well received, but it also had some gaps. And those gaps, were things like communities lacked the facilities some communities lacked the facilities for community kitchens or community storage or the ability to develop support programs, whether it was school lunch or elder meals programs or things like that. So it was one thing to harvest traditional food for the communities, but then what's the next step, right? What are the next steps towards that eventual goal of food sovereignty? And so we introduced the new Community Food Fund, which allows communities then to invest in those things that they need in their community. And again, it's designed to be very flexible. It's designed to allow communities a maximum amount of leeway, because they're the ones, community members are the ones that are best positioned to determine what's needed in their communities. And so that was launched in August of 2022. And again, it's proven to be very popular and very successful. Next slide, please. So in terms of governance, we have a number of external partners. Our food bank colleagues talked about their Northern Advisory Group. we've got a number of different inputs directly to the Minister of Northern Affairs to provide insight, and these groups we work with on a daily basis, frankly, on new ideas and on how we can introduce new initiatives to address food insecurity in the North. So the first you're probably most familiar with, Nutrition North Canada Advisory Board. Nellie Cornouaille, you guys, everybody would know quite well, was a long-time member of the board, both as member and as chair. So the advisory board provides information and advice to help guide the program. But beyond that, we've also got two working groups. The first is an Indigenous working group. It was launched in 2017. It's made up of First Nation and Métis partners from various regions within NNC, and it provides us with provides them with an opportunity to collaborate and let us know and provide input in ways that they can improve the program. And then subsequent to that, or in relation to that, we have the Inuit Crown Food Security Working Group. It was established a year later, or 6 months later or so, in a year later, December of 2018. It's part of the Inuit Crown Partnership Committee, and it's focused specifically on Inuit and Nangat. And again, it plays a very similar role to the Indigenous Working Group, as well as Nutrition North, which is contributing to policy and program development and how we can improve to make things better in their communities. Next slide, please. I'm just going to go very quickly through this. Again, we're constantly looking for improvement. I mentioned the research grant. So we've got $1.5 million over 2 years. Communities have partnered up with academics to look at ways to address food insecurity and bring forward food security solutions that align with their priorities. We're expecting the first round of reports in March of 2025. Aladdin budget 2024. We got a new round of funding, and we're looking forward to launching the next round of the research grant capability. We've hired our own academic through Professor Lazar, and he's looking at the subsidy specifically, and we're looking forward to seeing and getting recommendations from him about how we can improve the accountability and compliance mechanism within the program. And then finally, the Minister Vandal recently announced that he is going to appoint a ministerial special representative in early 2025 to do an external review of the NNC program. So on top of everything that I talked about, we're constantly looking, and the minister is constantly looking at improving the program, and we're hoping that the ministerial special representatives will play a key role in that step. Next slide, please. So I'll leave it at that, but I'll just conclude by saying, looking forward to your questions and comments. I would say the program has changed significantly since 2011, when it was just focused on providing a subsidy. It replaced the food mail program. Now we're looking more at initiatives and to address food insecurity directly. And we're looking to work with partners like Food Banks Canada and Indigenous governments and communities on the ways that we can support and address food insecurity in the North. So thank you, merci, and I look forward to any questions you might have.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation from Food Banks and Nutrition North. So I will now ask the members if they have any questions for the presenters. Okay, Mr. McNeely.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation and the acknowledgement to the invitation to share your program and the wonderful benefits that that is happening in order to help make it happen. I look forward to working with you, and I know we had a number of discussions already, and if you look at the region that I represent, we're the largest in the Northwest Territories, and yet the poorest. And the only winter road we have is under construction now. That would bring us, the residents, one step closer to getting affordable food security. Now we have the ability, the opportunity, in 12 months to drive out to get our household staples. And the hardships felt by Sahtu can be seen by a number of things that happened over the last, more so the last 2 years, with the cancellation of the barge. The barge was really a mass volume payload system that brought affordable, not only lumber, groceries, and fuel to our community. And it had the ability to transport deck freight, fuel inside the barge. Now that's all gone. So our only payload is a 53-foot trailer. Now you spread the cost over that, and imagine the cost of financing for 8 grocery stores. We got 8 grocery stores in Sahtu. Now you got to bring enough pop to sell for 12 months, and sugar. Now, the other option is air travel, yes. It's a means of transport to the supply chain, but a costly one. So as you can see, if you analyze the environment of the Sahtu, it's very challenging to live there, and we need every help we can get. And I really look forward to designing a supply chain that could bring affordable groceries to our 5 communities. Maybe we can take advantage of some immediate actions to bring that affordable benefit during this winter road season. Now, Wayne or Mr. Walsh had mentioned, you know, it's a complex issue. Yes, it is, and I'm certainly available for the challenge to remedy a solution for that challenge. And, you know, once we identify a system that is accommodating to get subsidy as your program identifies, it could be tweaked as you move along and you learn from it. Not too many people really know Nutrition North, other than downtown Cove Lake at the co-op store. Okay, here's a Nutrition North sign below that product. But you ask yourself the question, does the customer really know the dollar value to the subsidy? Is it identified? If I can say, okay, well, this is what Nutrition North is doing. The normal retail price of that box of milk is $10, but they subsidize it by $4, so now it's $6. Seeing is believing. Now I can say it's working. But in this case, I think maybe bringing the programs closer to the customer would be an ideal solution. Set up a shop in Norman Wells. People could go there. Here in Yellowknife, I hear there's a Nutrition North office here, but where is it? I have no idea. So I look forward to learning and participating into a supply chain designed for all of our small communities. That's why one of the reasons why I decided to sit on this committee on the Standing Committee of Social Development, because we sincerely need a lot of help in our small communities. And MLAs in this room represent those small communities. So I look forward to learning more about both your programs and how we can tweak it to supply all these little communities. Because Lord knows we need that subsidy immediately. Must see.
So, it was more of a comment? Okay, but I will give them the opportunity if they want to speak to it.
Canada questions, Mr. Mozambique? You want to take this one?
Yeah, if I may, I'm happy to respond, but just very quickly on a couple points. The first is on the, so one of the things that we haven't talked about yet, but I think it's front and center, is the issue of climate change, right? And the impact that's having. And so you mentioned the impact on the water flow in the river and the impact it's had on the barging into the Satu. We're also seeing that on, the ice roads are such an important lifeline. But with winters being warmer and getting shorter, even that's under threat. And we see that all over the Nutrition North. So then it becomes a bigger issue. Like you're right, it becomes a supply chain issue. And that's when we need to start conversations about infrastructure development. And so we need partners like Transport Canada, like others, to look at, alternatives and building that infrastructure so that there's some stability there, because it's just becoming more and more acute. On your point about transparency or the customer knowing, it's one that I hear too often, and it concerns me because the customer should be able to actually see exactly the difference in the prices on the sticker at the grocery store. Like they should be able to see what the pre-subsidy rate is and what the post-subsidy rate is. And if they're not, then we have a problem, because that's part of what the program is about. So I would love to learn more if there are issues, whether it's in Norman Wells or other places, that's not happening and people don't see the savings, then let us know and we can follow up with the retailers. The one thing I did fail to mention as well, I've got Mario Bria, who's my director in the room there. And so after we sign off, if you got any other questions, I'll point them to Mario as well. So we can follow up on that. But we do collect data from all the retailers about what the prices are on a monthly basis on items before and after the subsidies applied. So if you're interested in knowing specifically about that data and the communities in the Satu, we can easily provide that to you as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walsh. And then, Mr. Brillant, do you want to say something?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just quickly introduce myself. Mario Bria. I'm director of the program. And to the point that's being raised, the one thing I do have to do a mea culpa on this, because we were meeting with partners over the last couple of days, and just as an example, one of the points that was risen is one individual thought that only meat products were eligible to this subsidy, and I was just taken aback by that reaction, because I deal with this day in, day out, but it struck me, and it goes to the point that we need to be doing more than even when we're coming to these meetings to make that known to the public, because the eligibility list is quite expansive, and and quite frankly, we continue to update it with our Indigenous partners. So that's just one example where, you know, what we say to folks is even our eligibility, the products that are eligible for subsidy are always up for renewal, and if our Indigenous partners want to add or delete products, we're always open to doing so, but just the actual knowledge that the wide span of eligibility strikes me as something that we're missing, obviously, the mark on some communications with our key partners. So we'll definitely take that back.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens, do you want to? Okay, yes.
Sure. My comment is a bit tangential in that I do see that there's a strong desire to talk about the programming, understandably, because that is sort of what needs to happen first. There needs to be an urgent response to the challenges that you're facing in the Satu region. And the first step to doing that is just trying to get some programming in place to help folks out. But something I couldn't help but notice as you spoke was how important infrastructure is. You talked about the road work going on. You spoke about a physical location in communities. And I just really wanted to jump on that and mention that infrastructure is often the catalyst that we need for greater change, for more systemic change. And so you'll notice as well, I do want us to focus. It's important to focus on these programs, but I always try to, we at Food Banks Canada, we kind of use this saying, it's to adopt a yes and attitude. We need to have these programs, yes, and we also need to be looking at long-term solutions as well that address those systemic problems. And so the policy recommendations that we include for the Northwest Territories in our Poverty Report Cards report includes several recommendations that address the importance of infrastructure, which I noticed you mentioned, as well as a number of other things. But I just noticed that you touched on that and wanted to make sure that that I made that point. So thank you.
Just to echo off Ed's comment as well as Mr. McNeil's comment.
It's okay. You can proceed. Yeah.
Well, just to echo off Isaac's comment and Mr. McNeely's comments there about engagement and food security programs in the region. I believe the key activities that we're here this week is to be able to get some engagement and get some solutions from the communities here at the community level and address them at our national level, and hope that we can bring these solutions and bring some activities into the communities. So for us at Food Banks Canada, building and strengthening those relationships from the community out is key for us to ensure that the activities of food security programming is going to be driven and led by the communities in the region.
Mr. McNeely, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My follow-up is to take the opportunity to extend an invitation for both of your organizations to come to the Satu, and would you commit to my invitation on having this presentation being shared to the general public and preferably all of the Satu communities? I see a lot of value in your program, and I lived and grew up in the communities, and I know the hardships that we're having now. I just shared with you some of them, but physically seeing the grocery prices in the communities would have a real impact on your presence there, on the value of your program. And if you can commit to my invitation and get back to me on possible dates, I look forward to sharing that with our region's leadership and coordinating your presentation to all of the communities. Thank you.
Okay. So that was more of a comment. Okay, thank you. No,
But we can commit to that for sure.
Okay. Okay, now we'll go on to Ms. Yakalaya. She's online. So Ms. Yakalaya, please proceed with your question.
Good afternoon, and thank you for your presentations. Both of them were pretty good. The question I have is for Nutrition North, Mr. Walsh. The Nutrition North program, what is it only run through the northern stores, or do you connect with other locally owned businesses that that sell food? Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Walsh?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the two biggest retailers in the north that are eligible for Nutrition North is Northwest Company, but it's also Arctic Co-op. I'm not sure what the presence of Arctic Co-op is in the Sahtu, but we do have a number of other smaller retailers and suppliers that are members of the community. So if there is a grocery store or a store in your community that's not participating in Nutrition North, we're certainly open to having discussions about including them in the program. We have a lot of smaller retailers that are part of the program, and certainly the more the merrier, right? Like, you know, one of the things I didn't mention in my presentation, but we recognize is competition also plays a big role in the in prices, right? So if we can get more than one or two stores involved in a community, the better it is for community members. Asi.
Thank you, Ms. Yakalaya. Do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I do. So I'm not. My region is the Decho region, so we're connected all by highway. And speaking to a store manager in one of my communities, I have one community that has no store, so there's no store there. They have to travel about 45 minutes to an hour to the next community to purchase food. So that's an issue for the people in their communities. I also noticed that you have Nahanni Butte is all your little dots are connected, but Nahanni Butte is one that is not on the list there. Well, I don't know if it's on the list. It doesn't show that on your little geographical, on your map list. Anyways, so the communities, like all our stores north of 60, like the cost of living up in the Northwest Territories here is high. So I've had a couple people ask me, why aren't we all using Nutrition North in the Northwest Territories? Our food basket is, like, for a little basket is pretty high as compared to down south. So is that something that Nutrition North can look at to include all communities north of 60? Because we have, like, when you talk about food insecurity, it's very high up here. Things cost a lot. It's hard on people living up north here, especially. I mean, you have that harvesters program, and that helps. That helps a little bit for people that want to live on mainly traditional food, but that's not everybody. So there's a lot of people in our communities, whether they're connected by road or not, are still living in poverty because the cost of food is high up here. So what I'm asking is, would Nutrition North consider including all communities north of 60 on the Nutrition North program? Thank you.
So, thank you for that question. That's it.
Excuse me, just wait.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Brillant wants to answer a question from the previous.
Oh, I'll just. If it's okay, Madam Chair, I'll just follow up after Mr. Walsh has responded.
Okay, Mr. Walsh?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry for my enthusiasm because it's a really good question and it's one that we've heard a lot. So yes, I mean, the short answer is yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things we're looking at. So right now, in terms of policy development, in terms of new ideas, when the program was established in 2011, the criteria was such that it was only focused on those communities that were benefited from food mail. And that had its own problems. So then over a couple of years, the eligibility criteria for Nutrition North was expanded to include what we described as isolated communities. So communities that were not serviced by a road and they had to, be serviced by air transportation for more than 8 months a year. A couple of years ago, when the program changed its criteria for evaluation to focus on food security, we got a lot of feedback saying, okay, it's time to relook at the eligibility of the program in terms of community members, because there are some communities that might be on a road that don't fit the definition of isolation, but experience the same or worse levels of food insecurity than those that might be on. And that was particularly true not just in the north, but we experienced a lot of that in northern Ontario and northern Manitoba. So one of the things we are looking at very actively in terms of expanding the program is to include what we would define as semi-isolated communities. And so the measure for semi-isolated communities would be different, and factors such as food insecurity would definitely play a role in how we determine eligibility. So great question. And like I say, I'm really happy to answer it because the answer is positive. Yeah, we are looking at it. It's something we've been considering, and hopefully we'll have good news. We'll knock on wood, depending on what the government decides.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Mr. Nirsu now, and then if we have time, we will go back for a second set of questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. My question revolves around how do you track the results, or how do you, reap the benefits of these programs? Because I'm from community Fort McPherson, that's on the highway system, the Dempster Highway, and I don't see the results. I don't see the difference. I don't see these Nutrition North signs in. We have 2 stores, the Co-op and Northern, and I don't see any of these Nutrition North signs in the stores. The only thing you recognize is the increase in prices. So I'm just wondering, how do you track these results? And because I've been approached by a couple of residents saying, why isn't Nutrition North, or I know there's a food bank in Aklavik, but why isn't Nutrition North registered or working in some of these communities? I see it's on the map here, the 4 communities, the 3 communities that I represent are on there, but they're still asking, why is Nutrition North not working in their community? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh?
Okay, so that's again some great questions, and there's a couple of questions there that I want to unpack. The first one, if I'm going to talk to specifically on how we track results, we do that in a number of using different measurements. So when it comes to the subsidy program, we track things like I mentioned earlier, we now track pre and post pricing data by community, so we'll be able to track what the prices are based on the subsidy we provide. Overall, and by region, we also track food shipped. There's a correlation between supply and demand, obviously, and the more people buy, the more food is shipped. So that was an important metrics that we've been using from the beginning. And then just more recently, as I mentioned, we changed some of our terms and conditions to focus on food security. So we are looking now at metrics that will tell us, food security measures. So that's kind of the broad reporting things that we do, but that doesn't answer your specific questions about your communities. So, and again, I think it's echoes a comment that was made earlier. If the community members are not seeing, visible evidence of the Nutrition North program being in the community, in the grocery store, and if that community is indeed a Nutrition North eligible community, then we've got a communication problems, and we've got some issues with the retailers because that's their responsibility. Now, Mario will confirm or deny, I guess, what I'm about to say. Fort McPherson, for example, I believe is on the road system, but I think it is designated as what we call the Nutrition North seasonal community. So what that means is the freeze up and break up period is such that during those periods, food has to be flown in, and during those periods, the Nutrition North program applies. So it's not necessarily a full-time Nutrition North community, but it is a community during those seasonal, freeze up and break up periods. And, going back to the Honorable Yakalaya's comment, why cannot, these semi-isolated communities be considered full-time? And as I mentioned, that's something that we're looking at doing moving forward. So I hope that helps.
Mr. Nursu, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, residents from the smaller communities often travel to regional centers. And they don't utilize their own businesses, so this hurts their business because products stay on the shelf for extended period of time, and they lose business. How the food bank impact the local businesses within your proposed locations that you're going to work from? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Food banks, Mr. Walsh? Stevens, yes.
For the question you asked for food bank services in communities, we look at developing a plan and a food system based from the community's needs and requests from reaching out to Food Banks Canada. So when we do start that relationship, we do a community assessment on what type of food bank services are required. One of them being if there is a store or multiple stores on the community or nation or hamlet, we try to look at developing and forming a partnership first, all and foremost, with the stores located in the community, just so that we're engaging and providing that service with everyone within the community or nation or hamlet. For Food Banks Canada perspective, we hope to grow that relationship and build that relationship with some of our community stores, retail markets in these communities, to keep the food on the shelf. So that relationship strengthens in time with ourselves and the store that are involved with the community. So for us, we go back to the table with the stores and ask how we can provide any type of services that would lower the cost of food or get access to donated food from the store to be able to filter through the food bank if a food bank is developed or erected on a community.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Smith?
If I return to the previous question, I just wanted to add to that, going back to one of the points I made when I was speaking in my presentation, again, on the importance of information gathering. What it does for us when we're able to regularly and consistently gather information from communities is it helps us to see what's working in communities and what isn't working, and also to see, what areas need to be addressed, where are the gaps. And so that's why, it's my hope that in the near future we can also continue to work with communities to help facilitate that process of gathering that information, of having a better understanding of perhaps where some of these gaps are. And then that would allow us to then, both with the community or if the community is willing to share that information with Food Banks Canada, for us to advocate and say, here are the gaps that we're seeing, and make recommendations, whether that be to the territorial government or to the federal government on, where we can see program improvements, even perhaps to programs like Nutrition North. So that's something we're definitely looking into at Food Banks Canada.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Morgan, do you have a question?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thanks to all of our presenters and guests today. There was a mention in the presentation by Food Banks Canada that your ultimate goal is food sovereignty for communities, that you have like some sort of framework or process that is trying to lead communities to that place. I wondered if you could explain what that would look like exactly. What does food sovereignty mean, and how do you know once you've gotten there?
Okay, just wait. Yes, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For ourselves at Food Banks Canada, we try to represent that scale where food insecure communities, food secure communities, food sovereign communities are playing that part, where if a community is reaching that point where they're food sovereign, they have control of their lands, they have control of the economic development opportunities, they also have control of their natural resources within a given area to be able to sufficiently support food security initiatives on the land harvesting activities, as well having a stable food system within their nation or community or hamlet. So when we look at that approach where communities are working to achieve at that level, we have to find out first and foremost what state are they sitting in currently with the community assessment. Are they food insecure? Are they being underserved? Are they food secure where they're meeting some of the targets within that range, and to hopefully achieve food sovereignty where they don't not require a food bank on the community, or their food systems are healthy enough to support the community without programs such as ours.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Oh, okay. Mr. Smith?
Just a quick addition, I think, really to add on to that, it's there has to be a standard of a floor that is applicable to all communities, but I think in terms of what it'll take to get there will vary for each community. I think the steps that need to be taken, and like you were saying, like what does that look like, what is the definition, will also depend on what the community defines that as, or what the community says that they will need to get to that place. So I think it's going to have to be a very collaborative process and working, on the ground with those folks. But at the end of the day, I think what you'll end up with is exactly what Jay's talking about here, having that floor that, no community will fall beneath, that we can consistently say, everybody has those criteria that Jay just lined out.
Thank you. Ms. Morgan, do you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, it sounds like you do have some sort of set criteria worked out, but then it would be somewhat flexible community by community how it would be measured. I'm curious to know if there are communities that you're working with in Canada that feel that they have achieved that food sovereignty. Do we have success stories or examples out there that we can, use as our sort of guiding post to, figure out what they did right and what's working?
We do. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens, yes.
We do have some communities that are in that realm of food sovereignty, but with that being said, that they don't reach out or connect with us, just with that sense that they are food sovereign. With that being the next step, a lot of communities, I shouldn't say a lot of communities, but few communities that are in that food sovereign state, they're pretty much running their food systems from from the harvesting situation to just economically securing their food security systems in their own communities. So we do have a couple of the communities that are in that food sovereignty state, but more or less the communities are in the food secure state, where they're hoping to walk into that food sovereignty with our programs and services. As for success stories, if I can reach out to you on a later comment or later date to provide those information for you, I'm more than happy to do that.
You can do that, and you can direct it to our committee clerk. Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah. Thank you. I do have two questions as well, one for food bank and one for Nutrition North. And I know that with the high cost of living in the NWT, food bank is greatly needed. I know that, because where I'm from, I'm like 107 kilometers down the road, but yet still, like people from my community, they still come to Yellowknife because it's cheaper to buy groceries. And in many of the communities, we have one grocery stores, and the majority of them are probably northern stores. So, it's so the even in Bichico alone, for 10-liter milk is like $14. I mean, sorry about that. $14. So, so when people come to Yellowknife, some of the people, if they don't have a vehicle, they have to catch a ride. So there's a wear and tear on vehicles, and school-aged children returning home, and the parents are not home. So there's a lot of problems, like coming to Yellowknife for some parents, for some families, just so that they can buy groceries that are, cheaper than the one store that we have. And I do represent Wati as well. The Wati, they have access All-Season Road, so it's the same thing with them too as well. They have one store. And two remote communities, it's a flying communities, they have only one store. So that challenges that, there's a lot of challenges, and we only have one stores, so there's no competition. And so food banks, I know in a larger regional center, you can go to them, the grocery stores. Like in Yellowknife, there's three. There's two independent and then one co-op store. So you can easily access outdated or, or they can do the donations. But in the small communities, we don't have that. We don't have that. So, so that's why I said, like food banks, it's greatly needed. So I'm just wondering if you reach out to, if the food bank reach out to Indigenous government and or Indigenous organizations, like the one that we have in my community is Friendship Center, and they do a lot of these work. And so I just wanted to know if you reach out to any of the Indigenous government in the NWT. Thank you.
We do actively engage and do outreach to our communities across the coast to coast to coast. For myself, I work in all our provinces and territories. So for reaching out communities to have access to food bank services, we have to make a direct relationship with the community that we're working with. Then we develop that relationship and see what kind of food bank services are required in the community. So with communities that have one store, we look at developing pantry programs, so they have a dedicated spot in the community where food is sourced and housed and for distribution for the community members. One of the main objectives why we were here this week with invitation coming to this Yellowknife was to discuss the possibility of developing a food distribution hub within the Yellowknife Satu region for the communities to have accessibility to food delivery on a regular basis. So the talks coming out of the meetings and sessions this week, we're looking at solutions from the community out, so we can provide a remedy for the solutions of the providing food delivery and food bank services to the Satu region communities on a regular delivery schedule.
Mr. Brilla?
Yes, thank you, ma'am. If I may, I would add, the benefit, or one of the things that was asked earlier was, so with respect to retailers having brick and mortar in the stores, and we're well aware that in a good number of communities, unfortunately, there's only one store. But what a lot of folks are not aware of is that we do have southern suppliers, suppliers from Yellowknife, Thunder Bay, Winnipeg, that ship to the isolated communities. And one of the benefits of these meetings, for instance, this week is we've got a southern supplier who is interested in moving food to the Sawtooth region, as an example. And we have and we're partnering with the air carriers as well. So we've got the three partners, and what'll happen is that this will give folks in at least those 5 communities an additional alternative that they wouldn't otherwise have, and they'll be able to order food from this provider, and it will be subsidized by our program. So again, it's something that folks were not aware of, and so not only are we making them aware of it, but we're gonna partner up with Food Banks Canada, the air carrier, and the food provider to start shipping food to these communities at a reduced, what we think will be equal or reduced price to what is being offered in their community presently. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And okay, with country food, in the North Slave region, especially for my people, Klishko people, caribou is our main diet. Not because there is a caribou, there's a restriction on caribou. We used to go hunting. Our people used to go hunting 3 times a year. Now it's only once a year, which is in like January to March, to go and on the access road to the diamond mine. When there's a winter road, so that's when our people, they go hunting once a year. And it's sad, because many of our elders, since 2009, since the restriction has been put in place, many of our elders that used to go out to the tundra in fall time for fall hunting, they haven't done that since 2009, and it's only in January, and it's the coldest season. So with that, and it's like, for our people to travel, especially in like when the winter road is open to Wukwiti and to Gamity, so the people that have to travel from that community all the way to the tundra, to the diamond mine once the road is open, and even from Bichuko alone, it's 12 hours going there and coming back, and that's a long drive for many of the harvesters. So there is and with the high cost of living, with the fuel, the price of fuel is very expensive, and so that's a challenge. That is a challenge, and with that in mind, I just want to ask, and then just recently in 2023 with the forest fire, 2023, NWT, I guess. Our land mass, I think over 500,000 hectare of land was burned. So, and a lot of those land burned, there's a harvester, there's cabins, with all the hunting equipment. A lot of them lost their hunting equipment, the snow machine or, boat, canoes, a lot of them. And last year alone, I heard from quite a few harvesters in my region that they couldn't go hunting last year because they didn't have the hunting equipment. So with the Nutrition North, they wrote in here, they said they provide assistance, harvester support grant. Can you elaborate more on the harvesting infrastructure? because many of our people, they're still, I mean, with the high cost of living, they're still trying to catch up to, to buy. They're still out. They don't have these equipment. So it's just that some of them are saying it's hard to make ends meet, and with the loss of the equipment, they can't afford it. So I want the Nutrition North or Nutrition North Canada to elaborate more on the harvesting infrastructure that they have here in their reports. Thank you. Mr. Walsh?
Thank you, Madam. Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so with the way the Harvest to Support Grant works is that we don't run it directly. What we do as a grant is we would transfer funds directly to the Indigenous or land claim organization. In this case, we would transfer funds to the Tlicho government, and it would be up to the Tlicho to decide how the money is distributed. So I can tell you that the program was initiated, the first fiscal year that money started flowing was in 2019, 2020. And since that time, over the last 5 years, we have transferred over $1.7 million to the Tlicho government for the Harvest to Support Grant, and then it's up to the Tlicho government to administer how they want to run the program within their government or within their region. So if anybody has, they're looking for support or looking to replace equipment or get equipment, they would need to go to the Tlicho government. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that information. It's not just my region; it's also the Sahtu region too, as well. So, yeah. Well, it's good to know. Thank you. And I think we still have time for one more set of questions. Ms. Yakalai is waiting. So, Ms. Yakalai, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And my question again is to Nutrition North. Food Bank Canada. Because if you're going to start working in the North here, would you have a position put in the North, or can you hear me? I hear a feed.
Yes, we do hear you.
Okay. So would you guys be proposing to have a position put in the North? And if so, how will they serve the regions? I have 5 regions here. Thank you.
I think that you were cut off a little bit, but I think Mr. Stevens, do you want to answer that question?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Speaker. For us at Food Banks Canada, we do have limited staffing resources at the moment. We're a fully remote organization. For myself being the Northern Network Manager, as well as we have Northern Program Officer for the program. We can be the voice for the northern communities, as well as being the liaison between ourselves and external organizations to promote and secure food security programs within the region. So for us, it's a lot of outreach, a lot of engagement, a lot of relationship building as well, to be able to bring out the activities from each of the communities, as well as finding source funding along with our programs and services to be able to accommodate and manage the programs that they're hoping to achieve in the region.
Thank you. Ms. Yakalai, do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you for that. My other question is for Nutrition North. Mr. Walsh, where is the office located in Yellowknife for Nutrition North? And the other part of the question is, do they travel to the regions to provide information, educational sessions to the people? Because it seems like not a lot of people are informed about what products what are available for subsidy. And just another comment I want to make, because I only have this chance to ask this question, is if you're going to include all communities north of 60 on your list of subsidized communities for food security, looking at the Canada Food Guide, maybe just because you're doing in addition to what you're already doing. Um, yeah, just I'm looking forward to that, basically. So I have the question and a comment. Thank you.
And that was to Mr. Walsh. Yes. Mr. Walsh or Mr. Brilla?
I think Mr. Walsh may have dropped off, but I can certainly take that question. We do not have a Nutrition North Canada office in Yellowknife. There is a regional office for Northern Affairs, and then so we would engage with those folks. But all our staff are located in the National Capital Region. And to the second part of the question, do we travel into the communities? Absolutely. In fact, I think it's probably the most, if not one of the most important functions of our positions. Unfortunately, we're not able to make it out to all the communities. You saw the number of communities and what have you, but we this week is an example where we're meeting with our partners, and then there will be follow-up within, for example, the Sahtu region. And the other thing I would mention is regarding our advisory board, there's a commitment to have meetings in community at least once per year, so that the advisory board members can take feedback from local, folks that are using the program day in, day out. But again, when it comes to communication and awareness of our program, especially with all the expansion that there's been, I think we can improve that for sure.
Thank you. I see Mr. Walsh is back online. So, Mr. McNeely, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm getting more and more comfortable on the information that you're sharing about your programs. And when I hear that and see the need for it over here, as my colleague Ms. Morgan mentioned, is there a champion project that we can, or a community that is now food sovereign, that we can share to, say, the members of Toledo? This is where you are now, and this is where you could be. And this is an example of food sovereign to your members. So more information like that. And have you got a, my question is, have you got a procedural type step-by-step process for me as the community leader to register with your organization, so we can initiate the qualifying process and get right down to deciding how to transport food? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Stephen?
For your comment and question, Mr. McNeely, we do look at that process. We do have the system in place, but we have to build it from the community out to establish the guidelines and procedures for a food bank establishment on the community. So we work with each community individual organization to develop their unique model to help suit their needs and meet the needs of the community. So in your case, for Sahtu region, we would engage with each of the communities, go into the communities, have a community engagement session as well as a community assessment on what type of infrastructure, what type of capacity are required to erect and support a food bank system within each of your respective communities.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. And just to address the first part of the question as well about examples, I think like Jay mentioned before, I mean, I can speak from my own experience of hearing from Jay over the years, kind of going through some examples of cases where communities have been able to enhance that sovereignty. There are many examples out there, so I'm sure, like Jay mentioned, that there's some that can be followed up with. And I'm now forgetting the second point I was going to add, so I guess I'll call it there.
Mr. McNeely, do you have a follow-up?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. My follow-up question is building on the existence of what we have here now during the experiences of the Norman Wells energy crisis. So this government donated to the food pantry that's operated by the town of Norman Wells. And they gave a contribution of $150,000. So they do have that organization providing food to the community. Now, if we can initiate discussions for you to come in and build on that, that could be an immediate, call it a pilot project, and people coming in from the surrounding communities and talking to the leadership in Norman Wells, okay, this is how Food Canada has expanded on the system here. This is how it works. So it's setting an example for marketing, advertising, sales, and communication on how your program is helping that system there. And a lot of people travel throughout the winter road season. So I kind of see that as an immediate to-do list. So are you up for that? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for taking that responsibility and that initiative on to be able to provide that in those set communities. Mr. McNeil, I think that we're up to the challenge for that. We want to make sure that each of their communities have that opportunity to have access to food security programs from Food Banks Canada, as well as accessing programs and services through Nutrition North Canada as well. So if you're looking to develop a pilot project, we can certainly look at the parameters of that and see what the development issues look like and bringing that to fruition in one of your set communities.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In some of the communities within my region, they conduct food kitchens, and they can only provide these services for a limited amount of time due to financial restraints. Would Food Canada be able to contribute or collaborate with these organizations to assist? This is very beneficial, especially for the working population, where they're not able to go home during lunch and have something readily available. So is Food Canada, will they be able to step in this area and work with the organizers of these food kitchen programs? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Stephen?
Sure. Absolutely, we look at that. We do develop grants to accommodate food security activities for communities. So we have capacity grant, we have accessibility grant, as well as a Northern Capacity Grant. All those are tailored to meet the needs of the activities for food security initiatives within our communities and regions across the north. We work directly with collaborating with the community members that are applying for the applications through the grant system. We kind of work with them, walk them through the grant process, and try to help them achieve full succession on the grant application. We do cover expenses and programs that involve community kitchens, as well as minimal hunting and harvesting activities, not to the capacity of Nutrition North, but we do provide the grant and availability for communities to access those grants and programs through our services as well.
Mr. Nirsu, do you have a, okay, so if there is no more other further questions, we will conclude the meeting, the briefing. So thank you for joining us today, and this concludes the public briefing on Nutrition North Canada and with the food banks. So thank you.